Subscribe to LearnCab and hit the bell icon to get notified.
So hello students, good evening to all of you, and my name is CA Rochelle Dessa. I will be dealing with the best strategy to deal with economics. Now, when we talk about best strategy, we know that the CA exams are a competitive exam, yes, and it is not predictable for us. So to say that a particular question can come, but we can predict which are the important chapters. So from the point of view of importance, we can say that the theory of demand and supply chapter is one which is very important. So understanding concepts of this particular chapter will definitely help you have a grip on economics as a subject for the exam. And from the exam point of view, from this particular chapter, one of the most important topics in this chapter is elasticity. Alright, so now what we are going to study about is elasticity of demand. And once we understand what it means, what are the different types of numerical coefficients associated with elasticity, we will also look at a couple of examples, a couple of problems here and there. And then we will look at certain few exam questions which have appeared in 2020 examination as well as the immediate previous 2019 examination. Okay, those are just a few questions on elasticity that you need to be familiar with. So without any further delay, let us come to this topic, elasticity of demand. Now, when you listen to the word elasticity, what do you understand? What does elastic mean? So you all know what the word elastic means, right? Something which stretches, right? Something which stretches. So elasticity of demand is nothing but the stretching of demand, all right? In simple terms, it is the responsiveness. It is how demand responds to the change in one of the variables on which demand depends. For example, you know that from the basics of demand and supply chapter, theory of demand, if at all you have watched my YouTube video on introduction to theory of demand, you would have definitely known that demand depends upon certain variables, right? So demand depends upon many variables. For example, the price of the commodity, the income of the consumer, the price of substitutes, complementary goods, yes? So a lot of things do determine demand. Now, when these elements change, how does the quantity of demand change? That itself is elasticity. So when it comes to elasticity, there are different types. There is price elasticity, there is income elasticity, there is cross elasticity, then there is advertisement elasticity. There are a lot of types of elasticity. First, and one of the most important types of elasticity, and something that can come for your exam, is price elasticity. So when we say price elasticity, what do we mean? We mean the degree of responsiveness of demand to the change in price, which is the variable we are talking about here, is price, right? Now, EP, that is this term, EP means price elasticity. So there is a particular formula for computing price elasticity. So what is this formula? The formula is percentage change in quantity demanded, means how much has the quantity demanded changed in terms of percentage, divided by percentage change in price. This is one of the formulas. Now you know that price and demand are inversely related, right? Inversely related means what? If the price increases, demand falls. If the price falls, demand increases, right? So there is an inverse relationship. And if you have watched the basic introduction video, you would definitely have come across this said by me earlier, yes? So price and demand are inversely related. That is why when we compute price elasticity, we will get a negative sign, okay? So we know already that no matter what we compute, we are going to get a negative sign, which is why when we compute price elasticity, we have to ignore this negative sign. But only for price elasticity, not for income elasticity or any other elasticity. Okay, only for price elasticity because it is inversely related. Alright. Now, in symbolic terms, if you had to write it in terms of symbols, you could write it as price elasticity is equal to change in quantity divided by quantity into original price divided by change in price. Further, if you simplify this formula, you get this one, which is pretty easy to remember. Okay, so you could memorize this particular formula for your exam. That is change in quantity divided by change in price multiplied by price divided by quantity. Alright, now we go to the numerical values, interpretation of numerical values of elasticity of demand. Now, the first one, elasticity is 0 if there is no change at all in the quantity demanded when the price changes. Now, if elasticity is 0, what does it mean? There is no elasticity, it doesn't change at all, right? Demand doesn't change at all, no matter what the price movement is, like whether the price is increasing or the price is decreasing, the quantity demanded does not change at all. Then in such a case, you can say that elasticity is 0, EP is equal to 0. Now, what is an example for this type of a product? For example, let us say electricity. You know that electricity is absolutely essential to you, right? You know that electricity is absolutely essential to you. So, if the price of electricity varies, can you actually reduce your consumption of electricity? No, it's very difficult, right? So, your quantity demanded is not going to change. That is why your elasticity is going to be 0. Similarly, medicines. Now, medicines prices may change for several reasons. But when are medicines taken? When you are not well, right? So, can you say that just because the price of medicine has increased, you are not going to buy that medicine? If the doctor says you have to buy that medicine, you have to buy that medicine. The quantity demanded is not going to change because of the change in price, which is why the elasticity of medicines is also going to be 0. Similarly, salt. Now, can any of us eat food without salt in it? No. So, irrespective of what the price, your quantity demanded is not going to change even if the price of salt changes. So, here your elasticity is going to be 0. So, this is the first numerical example. Now, we have in terms of numbers. You can see here that when the price was 10, the quantity demanded is 100, and when the price fell, in general terms, what should happen? When the price falls, demand increases, right? But here, the demand remains the same. There is no change. So, if there is no change, what is going to happen? Percentage change in quantity demanded, 0. Percentage change in price over here is 50%. It is still 0. EP is 0. Now, if we have to plot this on a graph, let us say x-axis is for quantity, y-axis is for price. If you have to plot this point, your quantity demanded is at 100, right? And your price is increasing from 5 to 10 to 15, but this quantity demanded doesn't change, which is why you have a vertical line. You have a vertical line, okay? And this line is parallel to your price, right? Next, we go to if in case your elasticity is 1, or it is also called as unitary. What does this mean? EP is equal to 1. What does it mean? It means if your percentage change in the quantity demanded is the same as the percentage change in price. Your numerator and denominator is same, then it is going to be 1, right? When will this happen? Let us take an example. Now, let us say earlier the price was 10 rupees and later fell to 5, 50% reduction. Earlier your quantity demanded was 100, later increased to 150, because when price falls, quantity demanded increases. So, when price fell to 5, your quantity demanded increased to 150. But you see the percentage change here. Percentage change in price was 50, percentage increase in quantity was also 50. So, what's going to happen? 50% divided by 50% is equal to 1, right? So EP is equal to 1. If you have to plot this on a graph, you have quantity on the x-axis, you have price on the y-axis, and you may plot this saying, let us say at this we have 100, here we have 150, and we have price of 5, and here we have 10. Now when we had 10, our demand was 100, 5, our demand was 150. So you can see the curve, right? Remember, always your demand curve is sloping downward, right? So that is also clearly brought out over here. The next numerical coefficient, that is if your elasticity is greater than 1, if your EP is greater than 1. When does this happen? If your elasticity is greater than 1, that means elasticity is more. When is elasticity more? Basically, your quantity demanded is greater than the change in the price, which means the change in price would be small, but the change in demand would be great. When does this happen? This happens in the case of certain comforts, like for example, television, computer, car, these things. The minute the price changes a little, you tend to think that, oh, this particular product has become cheap now, and your quantity demand may increase. Okay? So in such a case, we call this type of elasticity as elastic or relatively elastic demand. Okay? If we have to explain it numerically with an example, let us say earlier the price was 10, and at this time your quantity demanded was 20 units. Now this particular comfort, the price fell by 50%, it came to 5. Naturally, ordinary people like you and me will perceive that the product has become cheaper, and we tend to buy more of that particular product thinking that this is a good time to buy it. So what is going to happen? Quantity demanded is going to increase, but you see the increase over here from 20 to 100. There has been an 80% increase. What was the increase in the price? Just 50%. But what was the increase in the quantity demand? 80%. So when you put it in the formula, 80% divided by 50%, what do you get? The elasticity will be greater than 1. So if you have to compute 80% divided by 50%, your answer is 1.6. It's greater than 1. Plotting this on the graph, quantity demanded as x-axis, price as y-axis. You know your earlier price was high, quantity demanded was less, right? After that, your price fell, your quantity demand increased a lot. So you see the demand curve. It's almost flat, not flat, almost flat. It's flattening, right? So this is the plotting on the graph when it comes to elasticity which is greater than 1. So you may get a question saying that if at all the demand curve is flattening, then EP is equal to 1, greater than 1, 0, less than 1, what is it? So that's how you should understand it is going to be greater than 1. Okay? Next one. Elasticity is less than 1. When is this? And what does this mean? It means that your change in price is great, is big, but your change in quantity demand is not that much. Okay? So, percentage change in quantity demanded is less than the percentage change in price, and here we call this demand as inelastic or relatively inelastic demand. Alright? And this is common when it comes to products like necessities such as, for example, rice, vegetables, etc. You may tend to sort of control your consumption of these particular products. Like for example, the best example I can give you is onions and tomatoes. So this happens quite often, right? The price of onions increases, the price of tomatoes increases. What does your mother do at home? Or whoever cooks at home? They start reducing this in your food, right? We start saying, okay, onions are costly, now let's not put so much onion in our food. Let's not put so much tomato in our food now for a couple of days. So that's how you restrict yourself. So what happens here? But can you stop it fully? No, you cannot. Because you have to eat that food. You have to have a bit of onion, a bit of tomato, right? You can't stop it completely. So the change is less. Your change in quantity demand is less, even though your price change might be a lot. You can't completely shift your demand. You have to have some amount of demand, but it is reduced. Okay. So for example, over here, you see the original price was 10 and it fell down to 4, right? There was a 60% drop in the price. However, when the quantity demanded was 100 earlier, now it has increased to 150. Okay. Now you know that the price has fallen, so quantity demand should have increased a lot. But what has happened here? 60% fall in the price leading to only 50%, 100 to 150 is 50%, right? 60% fall in the price leading to just 50% increase in quantity demand. Your change in price was considerable, but your change in quantity demand was not that much, right? So if you have to compute this, what's going to happen? 50% divided by 60%. You may compute. You will get the answer as 0.8. This is less than 1, right? So elasticity is less than 1. If you have to plot this on a graph, let us see what shape of the demand curve you are going to have. So initially your price was 10, your quantity demand was 100. Now your price fell down drastically. Okay? Your quantity demand has increased slightly. So here you see the demand curve is more steep, right? So that way you may interpret when it is less than 1. Now coming to the next one, that is when elasticity is infinite. What does this mean, infinite? It means that your elasticity is extremely high, even though the change in price is extremely small. Like when there is a small price reduction, it increases the demand from 0 to infinity. Similar case, if there is a situation like this, would you say that this particular situation is realistic? Is it possible? Small price reduction making the demand raise like from 0 to infinite? Slightly unrealistic, right? Slightly unrealistic. So under such a case, the consumers feel that they should buy whatever they can at that particular price because the price has fallen. All right. So even a slight increase in price, if at all, if there is a slight increase in price, they would not buy anything of that particular product. So if it is a small price reduction, the demand increases to infinity, and a small price increase, they would not buy anything at all. So in such a case, elasticity is infinite. Okay. How would you plot something like this on the graph? Now what is happening? Your quantity demand is infinite. So your quantity demand line has to be horizontal to your x-axis, which stands for quantity, right? So the price is going to be at one particular point, and your quantity demand is just, there is no extension, like it doesn't end here actually, it just goes on. It doesn't end here. It goes on and on. Okay. So if at all they say that if your demand curve is horizontal to your x-axis, what sort of elasticity is it? You should understand that it is elasticity which is infinite. Okay. EP is equal to infinity. Now, let us quickly look at all that we have studied in the past couple of minutes. When is a numerical measure 0? When the quantity demand does not change as price changes. So, this is called as perfectly inelastic, doesn't change. When is it greater than 0 but less than 1? Quantity demanded changes by small percentage than the change in the price. So, here it's called as inelastic. When is it 1? When the quantity demanded is exactly the same as the change in the price. Then it is called as unitary elastic. When it is greater than 1 but less than infinity, here the quantity demanded is changing by a larger percentage than the change in price, and it is called as elastic. Now, when is it infinite? When the purchasers are prepared to buy all they can at that particular price and none at all if there is a slight increase, then it is called as perfectly elastic. Okay. Now these perfect situations, that is this one and this one, slightly rare to find, you can say unrealistic to a certain extent. Okay. They don't really happen, and you have to have certain market conditions for this to happen. All right. Now let us look at a few examples, as these are important and you may get similar questions in your exam. First one, the price of a commodity decreases from 6 to 4 and the quantity demanded of the good increases from 10 to 15. Now, the question is, find the coefficient of price elasticity. You have to find out EP is equal to how much. So you may be given a couple of options. Okay. Now we don't have options. We will just solve it. So now, you know, the price of the commodity has decreased, right, from 6 to 4. How much is the change in the price in such a case? How much is the change in the price? 2, right? The change in the price is 2. Quantity demanded of the good increases from 10 to 15. How much is the change in the quantity? It is 5, right? Then P and Q is nothing but original price and original quantity. So, original price was 6 and original quantity was 10. Putting this in the formula, you can say 5 by 2 into 6 by 10. And when you calculate that, you get 1.5. Similarly, we look at another example. Illustration second. A 5% fall in the price. Now, they have already told us how much the price is falling. 5% fall in the price of a good leads to a 15% rise in its demand. Okay. So, what is the change in price? 5%. What is the change in demand? 15%. Determine the elasticity. Now, what is the formula? Percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price. Now, percentage change in quantity is 15, right? So, 15 divided by 5 goes 3 times. So, the answer is 3. So, EP is equal to 3. What does this mean? If EP is equal to 3, that means it is greater than 1, right? If it is greater than 1, it is an elastic demand, right? That means the quantity demanded changes by a larger portion when there is a small change in the price. The next illustration now. The price of a good decreases from 100 to 60. Okay. What was the price earlier? 100. Now it is 60. What is the change? 40, right? 40 rupees change per unit. If the price elasticity of demand for it is 1.5, now the question is slightly different. What have they given us? They have given us the coefficient. They have given us EP. Okay. So, if the price elasticity for it is 1.5 and the original quantity is 30, what is the new quantity? So, this is a slightly twisted question, Let us understand what they have told us. They have told us the original price and the new price. They have told us the EP. They have told us the old quantity, the original quantity. They have not told us the new quantity. Okay. So, here we start off in a slightly different way. We have this, we don't have change in quantity, we have change in price. We have original price and we have original quantity. Now, using all these things, we have to find out change in quantity. Once we know the change in quantity, we are going to add that to the original quantity and find out the new quantity. Okay. So, here they have given us 1.5 is EP. We don't know change in quantity. We know that the change in price is 40 because 100 minus 60. Then we know the original price is rupees 100. We know the original quantity is 30. So, now if we simplify this, what do we get? Solve this particular thing, we get that the change in quantity is 18, right? Change in quantity is 18. and this is a positive change, remember. So what is the new quantity? Original quantity was 30, right? So if you add 30 to 18, will you get the new quantity? Yes. So that is why the new quantity is 30 plus 18, which is 48 units. Now what do you understand here? You can understand that when the price fell from 100 to 60, your quantity demanded increased from 30 to 48. Alright. Now we go to the next aspect when it comes to elasticity. What is that? Income elasticity. Now earlier what did we study? Price elasticity. So what was price elasticity? Price elasticity was the change in your quantity demand with respect to the change in the price. Now you are going to study the change in your quantity demand with respect to change in income. Okay, with respect to change in income. So how does income change impact your quantity demanded? That is what we are going to study now. Now, income elasticity of demand is the degree of responsiveness of quantity demanded of a good to the changes in the income of the consumers. Percentage change in demand divided by percentage change in income. What was the earlier formula? If you all remember, percentage change in demand divided by percentage change in price, right? Now that price has been replaced by income, that's all. It's that simple, okay? The formula otherwise is the same. You just have to replace price with income, that's all, okay? Further, if you want to express this symbolically, just like how we did earlier with in the case of price, all we have to do is change in quantity divided by original quantity divided by change in income divided by original income. Further simplify this to make it easy, we just go to the last one. Okay, this is something which you can memorize. So change in quantity divided by change in income into income divided by quantity. This stands for original income and original quantity. Now let us look at certain examples. Now these will make you understand what it means in a slightly better way, I think. Okay, before we go to these examples, I would like to know if you all have any doubts in price elasticity. There's someone who has asked, I have a problem making diagram. Did it appear after foundation or not? Please tell. Alright, so as you know that the economics paper is actually multiple choice. So you don't have to draw a diagram, but they can give you a diagram and ask you to interpret it, and they can give you options. So it is important for you to understand the diagram. Yes, it is definitely important for you to understand a diagram, but you don't have to draw a diagram. But knowing to draw a diagram will help you understand it. Alright, so that looks to be like the only question. Am I right, Kavita?
Yeah, this is the only question.
Alright, okay. So then we will proceed with income elasticity. Alright, so let us now look at examples for income elasticity. As I said, we are comparing the income and the change in demand. So let us look at the first one now. The income of a household increases by 10%. What does this mean now? When your income increases, you have more money with you, right? You have more money with you. But does that mean your quantity demand is going to change for all types of products? No, not really. So here we are going to analyze each type of product. As we have studied earlier when it comes to determinants of demand and when it comes to how certain incomes changes, how certain demands are affected by income changes. So we studied that under 3 different categories, right? We had necessities, comforts and luxuries. So that's where we studied about these things. Now let's just look at how it affects certain types of products. Now, just because your income of a household rose by 10%, does it really mean that the demand for wheat will rise by a huge percentage? Not really. Just because you have more income need not mean that you are going to buy more wheat, right? Because what kind of product is wheat? Wheat is a normal product. It is a necessity, right? When your income increases, your disposable amount increases. You're not going to eat more, right? So that is why here they have told as an example, the demand for wheat rises only by 5%. Okay. So now going to this conclusion, what has happened here? 5% increase in quantity demanded in comparison with 10% increase in the price. So 5% divided by 10%, you get the answer 0.5. Now is 0.5 greater than 1 or less than 1? It's less than 1. What does that mean? It is, you can say, relatively inelastic, doesn't change that much when it comes to change in the income, right? So why? Because it is a normal good, it is a necessity. Now let us look at a comfort. The income of the household rose by 10%. The demand of TV, now TV is a comfort, right? The demand for TV rose by 20%. Now you might understand this logically. What happens when your money increases? There is a tendency for you to buy things which you don't have, right? So let us say up till now you had certain basic income. Now suddenly you got a promotion, you got a hike. You need a new TV. You went on ahead to buy that particular TV, right? Even though your increase in your salary, let us say, was a small amount, you chose to buy that TV now because you know that you are going to be earning more from now, right? So even though the income increased just by 10%, your demand for TV increased by 20%. And this is an example of a comfort. So what happened here? 20% quantity demanded in comparison with 10% change in your income. So 20 by 10 is 2. Now what is 2? 2 is greater than 1, which means this particular elasticity is greater than 1, which means this particular good is relatively elastic, or you can say elastic demand. TV has elastic demand. Why? Because TV is a comfort, or for some cases or certain households it may be a luxury. Okay, that depends from person to person. So elasticity is greater than 1 when it comes to comforts or luxuries, you may say. Coming to the third scenario, income of the household has risen by 5% and the demand for bajra falls by 2%. Now if you have watched the previous lecture on the particular type of goods called, you can say, inferior goods or giffen goods, for example. Do not know if you have heard this term before. If at all you are completely new to this particular chapter and this is your first lecture on this chapter, then you may not be knowing what inferior goods are. So for your sake, I will just quickly explain what inferior goods are. So inferior goods are those goods which are not inferior in quality. They are inferior when it comes to the price. Okay. So they are basically cheap goods. Now what happens to these type of goods? When your income increases, when you have more money with you, you will not buy more of those goods. In fact, you might stop buying those goods and proceed to buy certain other expensive goods. Now that you have that and you don't really need that. So here in this case, bajra has been treated as an inferior good. Okay. If I have to explain giffen goods to you in simple terms, now what happened in the case of Giffen's paradox? There was bread and there was meat, right? So when the price of bread increased, it went against the theory of demand. The demand for bread should have fallen, right, when the price of bread increased, but it was vice versa. When the price of bread increased, the demand for bread increased, but when the price of bread decreased, the demand shifted. The demand also decreased for bread, but the demand for meat increased. Why? Because people could afford meat, right? So it is something like that, you may say, in this case. Although they had more money with them, the demand for this good fell because the people now choose to prefer spending on more expensive goods and not on that particular good. So what happens over here? You may say that your quantity demand has changed negatively because it has fallen, right? So it's minus 2% divided by 5%, which is an increase in the price. So negative 2% divided by 5% gives you negative 0.4. Now remember, we had not paid attention to the sign when it comes to price elasticity. Why? Because price and demand had inverse relationship. But that's not the case when it comes to income. So here in income elasticity, you have to give importance to the sign. You have to give importance to positive and negative. Okay. So here that's why whenever the demand falls, we show it as a negative. So minus 2% divided by 5% giving you minus 0.4. So your elasticity is less than 0. So what does that mean if elasticity is less than 0? This is basically non-responsive to income, you can say. This is non-responsive to income. Okay, just because your income increased, your demand actually fell. Okay, it is less than 0. It is an inferior commodity. So when there is income elasticity less than 0 and they give you options, what kind of good is it? You know that your income elasticity will be less than 0 or negative, in other words, when it comes to inferior commodities. This is to be remembered here. Okay. The next one, the income of a household rose by 7% and the demand for commodity X rises by 7%. So what has happened here? The income and the demand is moving equally. So you remember unitary elastic? Yes. So what happens over here? Income elasticity is unitary over here. Particular X product has unitary elastic demand. Then income of a household rises by 5%. The demand for buttons does not change at all. So what's happening? Your change in demand is 0, whereas your change in income is 5. 0 by 5, the income elasticity is 0. So buttons have 0 income elasticity, you may say. It's just an example. This is not the truth, buttons, you can't really say, you can't generalize saying buttons have 0 income elasticity. This is just an example that they've given you. So if the quantity demand doesn't change at all, then the elasticity is equal to 0. Okay, then that particular product, whichever product it is, has 0 income elasticity. Now coming to the next concept in elasticity, which is cross elasticity. Now why do we call it cross elasticity? Because we are talking about the elasticity of two different products in comparison to each other. What is the change in quantity demanded of one particular product when we compare it to the price of its related goods? Okay. So a change in the price of one good leading to the change in quantity demanded of another good, that is cross elasticity. So in this particular section, we will be comparing price of one product, quantity of another product. Okay. That is why we have here certain different symbols. We have to specify X and Y. Why? Because X stands for one good, Y stands for another good. Okay. So that is why the formula goes as this: EC, because it is cross elasticity, EC is equal to change in quantity of X divided by quantity of X. This whole thing is divided by change in price of Y divided by price of Y. If you simplify this formula, it will look like this: change in quantity of X divided by change in price of Y. Remember, quantity of one good, price of another good, into price of Y divided by quantity of X. Now, EC stands for cross elasticity. Quantity is of one good, that is X. Price is of another good, that is Y. Okay. Keeping this in mind, which are the two different types of related products? We have substitute products and complementary products. Now, what do we mean by these? So, just going to brush through, if at all you have not gone through that basic lecture. Substitute product means one which can be used instead of another, in the place of another. For example, you may say tea and coffee. You may either have tea or coffee. You may either have, let us say, bread with jam or bread with butter. So, jam and butter, substitutes, right? You can use one instead of the other. But they serve the same purpose or they satisfy the same need. So, those are substitute products. Now, what happens in the case of substitute commodities? In the case of substitute commodities, the cross elasticity, the cross demand curve slopes upwards positively. What does that mean? You see in this graph here, when the quantity demand is of tea and the price is of coffee. Okay. So what is happening? Now when the price of coffee, let us say, was 5, for example, let us say it was 5, the quantity demanded of tea was 10 units. Okay, when the price of coffee was 5, the quantity demanded of tea was 10 units. Now let us say the price of coffee increased to 10. What has happened now? Coffee is costlier. Coffee is costlier. So there are chances that people who were earlier drinking coffee may stop drinking coffee and prefer tea. Right? So what is happening? When the price of coffee is increasing, the demand for tea increases. Why? Because people have shifted from coffee to tea. They prefer to purchase tea. They prefer to drink tea. So that is why the quantity demanded of tea has increased now to 15. Okay. So what happens? The demand curve slopes upwards. Alright. Now, this is just a numerical example. What's going to happen if in case the price of coffee increases, quantity demanded of tea may increase, because now coffee has become more expensive. So people who are drinking coffee will shift now to drinking tea. They will prefer to drink tea. Coming to complementary goods. Now what are complementary goods? Now you know that complementary goods are those which are used along with each other. For example, pen and ink. Right? And for example, bread and butter. Because bread and butter is taken together. Right? Similarly, printer and ink. There could be a lot of examples for complementary goods like this. Now what happens in the case of complementary goods? Slightly different from substitute goods. There is an inverse relationship between price of a commodity and the demand for its complementary good. Alright, so in such a case, the cross demand curve slopes downwards. For example, let us say our x-axis has quantity demanded of ink and our y-axis has price of pen. Now let us say price of pen was 20 rupees. Okay, price of pen was 20 rupees. It's expensive now, let us say it's expensive now. So naturally the demand for pens would have been less. So if the demand for pens are less, will the demand for ink also be less? Yes. Less pens, so less ink, right? So the demand for ink would have been just 10 units of ink. Now let us say the price of pen fell. Price of pen fell to 10 rupees. Now pen has become cheap, so more pens will be bought. Naturally, will more ink also be bought? Yes. So the demand for ink also increases? Yes. So the demand for ink has increased from 10 to 20. You see how it is different from substitute goods, right? Here, when the price of a particular good increases, the demand for the particular complementary good also decreases. Okay, it is an inverse relationship here. So in such a case, you have the demand curve sloping downward. This is just an example. Pepsi and popcorn considered as complementary goods here. You assume that you are going to have Pepsi along with popcorn in a theater. So what's going to happen? As your the price of Pepsi increases, the quantity of demand for popcorn falls, because people prefer to have both of them together and not individually. Now, let us take an example. The price of 1 kg of tea is rupees 30. At this price, 5 kg has been demanded. Now, the price of coffee rises from 25 to 35. The price has increased. Quantity demanded of tea rises from 5 kg to 8 kg. Okay? Find out the cross price elasticity. Now, we already saw logic-wise what happens in the case of substitute goods. The quantity demanded of the other good will increase, right? Here they have asked for the coefficient also. You need to know the coefficient also here. So, using the formula, you know that change in quantity of x divided by change in price of y. So, what is the change in quantity of x? 5 to 8, right? 5 to 8. So, that is negative 3, right? 5 minus 8, negative 3. Then, what is happening to the change in price? 25 to 35. 25 minus 35, negative 10. into price of y, that is 25, original price of y, divided by quantity of x, which is 5 kg, original quantity of x, which is 5 kg. When you solve it, you get plus 1.5, positive 1.5. So minus divided by minus, positive 1.5. So that means here it is a positive coefficient. Now when you have a positive coefficient in cross elasticity, this is the best way to understand. Whenever you have a positive coefficient in cross elasticity, that means that particular product is a substitute. Okay. So if you have positive, what does it mean? They are substitute goods. Okay, they are substitute goods. They are highly elastic. So here in this case, the quantity demanded of tea is highly elastic when it comes to coffee. Let us take another example. Let us consider sugar and tea. Now what are these goods, sugar and tea? Sugar and tea are complementary goods, right? They go together, right? So the more amount of tea you consume, the more amount of sugar you will put in it, that way. Okay. Now let us say 1 kg of sugar is 50. At this particular price, you have 10 kg demand. Okay, this is the original demand, original quantity demanded of sugar. Now if the price of tea is falling from 30 to 25, what happens in the case of complementary goods? When the price falls, the demand of the complementary good will rise, right? So the consumption of sugar rises from 10 to 12 kg. Find out the cross elasticity, comment on its value. This is the question. Now you know the formula, change in quantity of the product divided by change in price of the other product into price of y by quantity of x. Now let us say x is sugar, y is tea. Now change in quantity of x from 10 kg to 12 kg. So that is 2, right? 2 divided by change in price of y. Now the change in price of y is 5, 30 minus 25, right? So you have 5 into price of y, which was originally 30, divided by quantity of x, the original quantity 10. If you solve it, you get a negative 1.2 as the answer. Remember, when you have negative 1.2, you can say that that particular product is a complementary product. So cross elasticity giving you negative sign refers to a complementary product. Now coming to the next type of elasticity, that is advertisement elasticity. Now what do we mean by advertisement elasticity? We understood about price. So change in quantity because of change in price was price elasticity. We understood about income. Change in quantity because of change in income was income elasticity. Cross elasticity between two different products. Now what is advertisement elasticity? So this is nothing but the relationship between advertisement, amount spent on advertisement and the quantity demanded. Alright, in simple terms, advertisement elasticity is nothing but your elasticity or responsiveness of demand to the amount spent on advertising. So in terms of formula, change in quantity demanded divided by change in spending on advertisement. So what is the change in the formula? Only the denominator, just like before. Earlier it was, in the case of price elasticity, it was change in price, income it was change in income, here it is change in advertisement amount, change in spending on advertisement. So if you had to put it in the form of a formula, the EA, because A stands for advertisement, okay, EA, elasticity of advertisement or advertisement elasticity, is equal to change in quantity demanded divided by quantity demanded, whole thing divided by change in advertisement divided by advertisement amount spent. Now EA is equal to 0 means if your elasticity, advertisement elasticity is equal to 0, just as before as we discussed, if advertisement elasticity is 0, what does it mean? There is no change in quantity demanded. There is no change in quantity demanded irrespective of the amount spent on advertisement. Now if advertisement elasticity is greater than 0 but less than 1, the change in demand is less than proportionate to the change in advertisement. Now if advertisement elasticity is equal to 1, it means your demand is changing in equal proportion to the change in the amount spent on advertisement. If your advertisement elasticity is greater than 1, then it means your demand is changing in a much greater proportion compared to the change in the amount of expenditure on demand. So this will actually help you to understand whether your advertisement is effective or not, whether it is worthwhile for you to spend a certain amount on advertising a particular product. So that is what advertisement elasticity helps you to decide. Now, since we have less time left, we will not discuss the determinants. We will go directly to the exam questions. All right, we will go directly to the exam questions. Now, this particular question appeared in the most recent economics question paper. It's very similar to the question that we have solved a little earlier. All right, the price elasticity. Now, what elasticity are we talking about? Price elasticity. So, the price elasticity of demand for X is 1. So, what have they told us actually? They have told us EP. They have given us the coefficient. We don't have to find it. Okay, so EP is equal to 1. This is what they have told us. Now, the original quantity demanded of X is 90 units. Okay, original quantity demanded is 90 units. If the price of X decreases from 300 to 180, so what is the change in the price? 300 minus 180. 300 minus 180 is how much? You may compute. 300 minus 180 is 120, right? Change in price is 120. Calculate the new quantity demand. What have they asked us? They've asked us new quantity. Q1 is equal to how much? Which means what? You can use the original formula to find out change in quantity. After which you have to add this to the original quantity to find out the new quantity. Okay, this is what you have to do. Now you have the original price given to you. How much is the original price? 300. Now all of this put in the formula. So what is the formula? The formula is nothing but change in quantity demanded divided by change in price multiplied by price divided by quantity. So this is the formula. Now what is your change in quantity? Do you have it? No, because you don't have the new quantity, right? So this we retain the way it is. What is your change in price? Do you know the change in price? Yes, we found out 300 minus 180 is 120 into what is your original price? Your original price is 300. What is your original quantity? Your original quantity is 90. Now, in order to solve this, what are you going to do? You are going to calculate. So you may take these items to the other side and find out what is the change in quantity demanded. So please do take out your calculators. I hope all of you all are trying this out simultaneously as I'm writing it down. Okay, so we have one answer in the chat box. I'm very happy to see. David John says 36 units. You are absolutely right, David John. Change in quantity is 36 units. Okay, change in quantity is 36 units. So what is the new quantity? I will write it here. All right. Q1 is equal to original quantity plus change in quantity. So original quantity was 90 plus change in quantity 36 units. So 90 plus 36, how much do you get? You get 126 units. Which means what is the answer? The answer is A, 126 units. So looks like some of you all have understood it. We come to, okay, supply of land. Again, this is supply. But okay, we'll just discuss supply of land, since you have to know what it means anyway. Okay, so supply of land. Is supply of land elastic, perfectly inelastic, inelastic? So although we are not talking about supply, let's just use our logic. What does elasticity mean? Change, right? Change. So is supply of land elastic? Does the quantity of supply of land change? Can you change with respect to price? Land itself is limited, right? So what should be the answer? perfectly inelastic. It does not change. It's not possible for you to change the supply of land. Doesn't. Okay, now coming to elasticity question related to demand. Income elasticity of luxury goods. Now we discussed this. Income elasticity of luxury goods. What happens in this case? When your income increases, does your demand for luxury goods increase? Yes or no? It does, right? When you have more income available with you, there are chances that you will purchase more luxury goods. So what should be the answer? The answer has to be positive and greater than 1, right? Positive and greater than 1. Okay. Which of the following statements about price elasticity of demand is correct? Price elasticity of demand is a measure of how much quantity demanded of a good responds to a change in the price of a good. Is this right? Yes, this is right. Price elasticity of demand is a measure. Yes. Price elasticity of demand is computed as the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. Yes, that is the formula, right? This is also right. Price elasticity of demand in the long run would be different from that of short run. Absolutely. Why? Because when we study about determinants of elasticity, time is definitely one. If you are able to delay the demand of a particular product, then the elasticity changes, right? You may want to postpone the purchase of certain products. So in such a case, elasticity changes, yes. So in the long run and in the short run, there will definitely be a change in the price elasticity. So what is the answer for this question? All of them. So the answer is all of the above, students. So you have to read all the options. If you select any one option in a hurry, then there is a tendency that you will lose that mark.
Subscribe to LearnCab and hit the bell icon to get notified.